And I call the member for Goldstein.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And Deputy Speaker, before I address the substance of this bill, I'll just continue on the comments from the member for Kingsford Smith, because you'd have to live in a sort of bizarro fantasy land to accept the proposition that he's put forward. Every single thing that the member for Kingsford Smith said is every single proposal put forward by the Australian Labor Party is good. It can do wonderful things. There are no extra costs involved, though everybody's getting paid more, getting better benefits, better outcomes, but it's not going to cost anybody more. And this has been the perennial delusional impact of the approach the Labor Party has taken to childcare in this country. What they've done is constantly increased obligations and regulations and costs on the sector. And make no mistake, most of it doesn't actually improve productivity or outcomes in the childcare sector. Truthfully, it doesn't barely even improves outcomes for the kids. But it does make it harder for young couples, single parents, to be able to access childcare at an affordable price. Because the Labor Party has never actually been interested in outcomes. Everything they focus on is inputs, with no interest in what you get as a result of what you put into a system. Same, they take attitude, education or healthcare. We hear them every time complain, oh, there isn't enough money. They never talk about, well, how do we improve outcomes? So no matter how much money we tip into the system, that kids get better educated, not interested in that. That people get seen on waiting lists, they're not interested in that. That people get higher standards of healthcare, not interested in that. Same is true with aged care, not interested in how people age with dignity. No matter what the issue is, their answer is always, what is the input, not the outcome. And this is the absurdity and the lack of logic that sits at the heart of their policy approach. Now, of course, Deputy Speaker, we have to talk about inputs as part of an honest conversation about how we provide sustainable public services that people need. No one would argue against that, but it should be matched against performance and outcomes. And we see this dishonest conversation they have at the moment where they're obsessed with increasing the contribution of super, even though the actual research shows that Australians already have enough retirement savings to live a dignified life in retirement at the international benchmark of 70% of your final salary. In fact, the overwhelming majority of Australians have more than 91%. So what they're actually trying to do is take more from today to defer to subsidise inheritances. They actually don't understand, or don't seem to understand if they read the Callaghan review, that their system that they're engineering is designed to benefit the rich. But let's face it, their interest actually isn't even to benefit the rich. Their interest is in benefiting their constituency of organised capital through the industry fund movement, where they want large capital to be at the heart of decision-making, where big business, big capital, big unions, and when they're in charge, big government, come together to conspire against the people. And that's what we see. Ultimately, these debates are about power, and what they want to do is empower themselves, because the Labor Party has always seen the success of this nation through themselves, not through the achievement, the aspiration, the goals and the dreams realised of the Australian people. It's got them in trouble a lot of times in the past, and what they want to do is keep destroying sectors step by step, including childcare, so that they can realise their ambition to control and manipulate it. And we take the exact opposite approach on this side of the chamber, Deputy Speaker. Everything we stand for is about how we empower Australians to be able to live out the fullness of their lives, not just in their working lives, but in dignity in retirement, which is why we won't hit them with giant new retiree taxes like the Labor Party, who before the last election misled the public and said it wouldn't hit low-income earners, then had to come back into this chamber and outside this chamber, including by the leader of the opposition, except, yes, in fact, they were going to push people, physically push them below the poverty line. And now with childcare, we're in a similar challenge, where their solutions to the problems is to make childcare more unaffordable for Australians. That is not our approach. Our approach is to try and get costs down. We've implemented reforms already that have done so, but yes, costs continue to creep up, partly because of demand, partly because of the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, partly as a consequence of things like rising wages. and regulatory standards as they've been implemented. But what we want to ensure is that for every working parent out there who needs and relies on childcare at this challenging or difficult time, that they can get access to services. And we've seen this approach continuously by this government, both because we've been prudent in the good times, but also built up a buffer so we can support Australians in the difficult times, such as we've had over the past 12 months, to provide temporary support and assistance so that we can remove the barriers for those who need them. We've done them in areas like telehealth to make sure that people can access healthcare services to the benefit of the patient and the doctor. And because some people are still facing challenge, we've recently announced extensions of that service, that critically important service. And this legislation fits as part of that conversation, which is continuing to provide business continuity payments required by the childcare sector when they need it. Now, we don't want that to be a permanent state of affairs. You know, we hear the members of the Labor Party on the other side of this chamber complaining at the moment about the decision of the federal government not to continue to support JobKeeper. They ignore the fact that it has now been running for nearly 9 months. And then in addition to that, the longer you keep it going and you have firms and jobs that don't require it, the bigger the gap creates and the more the restructure and the adjustment there is, and more people will find themselves out of work because they would rather public policy and jobs be based on falsehoods and false foundations rather than sustainable futures. And that's the same approach we're taking with this legislation, is to say that there is temporary measures that we need to implement and provide discretion to the government to take action when there are temporary emergencies and disasters to support the services when they need us. And they need taxpayer support because they've got to support working parents across the country. So we've looked at what we need to do to make sure that we can support childcare so that the parents of this country that need their help or need the assistance to be able to go to their jobs, support their families, or to work in the challenges of raising children amongst their lives can get the support, and the Morrison government has their back. There'll be further reforms in this space, Deputy Speaker, but this is an important one as part of making sure that those Australians that face challenges get the help they need now, including in the childcare sector, including the providers, so they can keep supporting the Australian children and Australian parents when they need it.